I came here to share my story of coming out because when I was going through it myself, there weren't a lot of resources out there. I kind of relied on stories in the media. At that time, the only thing on Netflix was like the L word, right? So I guess I hope that it'll get easier as time goes by and more people share their stories and connect with regular folks. And not have to rely on like the media to do that. Yeah. I think for me, telling my friends wasn't that hard. The biggest obstacle for me in coming out was coming out to my family, mainly because I grew up halfway around the world in Singapore, and it's a very conservative society. Being in the LGBTQ community is actually illegal. So when I realized that I was bi, I was like 24 at that time, it explained a lot of, I guess, attractions I'd felt growing up and I was in denial about. But it wasn't until I met my first girlfriend and things were getting serious that I thought to myself, yes, I need to do this. I have to talk to my family. So this was 2012. I go back to Singapore once a year, and me being a documentary filmmaker, I decided to film my coming out. But I didn't want to give it away at first, so I told my parents that I wanted to interview each of them to learn about their lives because I didn't really know them. You know, growing up, all they asked you about was how school and stuff. So yeah, my dad loves to tell stories. So when I sat him down, he talked for 2 hours about his life, and that was great. And the whole time in my head, I was thinking, okay, when can I jump in with my story? When do I tell him? And finally, you know, I mustered the courage. I said, Dad, you know, you've shared a whole lot with me over the last 2 hours. Now it's time for me to share something with you. It's really personal. I've started dating someone, and she's a woman. And my dad went from, you know, having spoken for 2 hours to going completely silent. Because previously I'd only dated men, and I think this came as a very big surprise to him. And after what felt like a long time of silence, he turned to me and said, I've never been so hurt by anyone in my life. So when I first heard that, I felt, you know, all kinds of guilt. And then he followed up with, you know, don't tell your mom, don't tell your brother, don't tell any of our relatives, any of my friends. And he got up and he walked away. Yeah, he didn't talk to me for the next 3 days. But I think as I took the time to process it, my mom also noticed the change in behavior in my dad. And she was like, you know, what's going on? Ever since he talked to you, he seems really distant. So I decided to tell her. I didn't listen to my dad. I told my mom what happened. And she grew up with Catholic upbringing. So she wasn't really open to it either. And, you know, she encouraged me to, she was like, oh, you know, maybe you just haven't met the right guy yet. You know, give it time. Maybe it's just a phase. And like any typical Asian family, from that point on, we treated it like that day never happened. For the next 3 years, even though because my family Skypes once a week with each other when I'm back in the U.S., every time I try and tell stories about my girlfriend, you know, they pretend, I guess. They refer to her as my friend. They would never ask about her. So it was just I think sweep it under the carpet and hope it'll go away kind of thing. Yeah. I decided not to press further until this 2013 when Doma got struck down, and my girlfriend proposed to me, and so we got engaged, and I was like, all right, now I have to break even bigger news to my parents, right? We knew we were only going to get married 2 years later, so I was like, all right, I've got 2 years, I can find a good time. But you know, when I went back to Singapore, it was just so hard. I just couldn't bring it up, because this time it's not just I'm dating someone. It's like I'm gonna marry this person and be with her for the rest of my life. So it not just means that, but it also means me moving from Singapore to the U.S. permanently. So it was gonna be a double whammy. I kept putting it off until like 2 months before the wedding. I think when I realized I was running out of time, I very awkwardly organized the family dinner. I never do that, right? So I was like, all right, everybody, I'm gonna buy pizza. We're gonna have dinner together on this night. And they all agreed, but I think they knew something was up. So we cordially had dinner and finished our dessert, and then I was like, okay, I have news. Dark and I are getting married, but we've worked really, really hard so that we've saved up enough for all of you to be able to fly to Chicago for our wedding. And then my parents and my brother, they were quiet. They didn't really know how to react. My mom tried to talk me out of it. But we decided that I would give them time to decide whether or not they would attend and support this marriage. A couple of days later, my dad was like, I can't go. I'm just gonna ruin the mood at your wedding. My mom was like, oh, I have to work. And then my brother was like, I asked my pastor for advice, and he told me that I shouldn't go and that I should support you, my sister, in some other ways. Find some other way to support you. Yeah. So I went ahead, came back to Chicago, had the wedding without my immediate family there. But I think the one, I guess, hope was that I have an aunt and cousins in New York, and they were like, we'll represent the family. So my mom's sister walked me down the aisle, and my two cousins came. And that was great. There's a silver lining. I think, now that we're married and it's permanent, I wonder if my parents and my brother had some kind of a secret meeting to say, you know what, there's no changing her. We've got to accept this, or we're gonna lose her, right? So when my father turned 70 last year, he asked me to go back to Singapore to celebrate with him, and I said, sure, but I'm gonna bring my wife along, and he said, okay. So that was September. This was my wife's first time, I guess, going on vacation with my family, and we weren't sure what to expect, but it's the little things, right? Like, my mom bought these little gifts, I guess, for each member of the family, and we all have our zodiac animals, right? So she's like, oh, I got you a tiger. What zodiac animal is dark? And the fact that she asked, I guess, was some kind of an indication that they're slowly opening up to it. So yeah, I'm hopeful that things are gonna get better over time. I don't expect them to become like advocates for the community or anything, but At least I didn't get kicked out of home or anything. It could have been a lot worse. Yeah. I was scared of how my parents would react, and I wasn't sure whether they would still love me, whether they would still treat me as their daughter. Yeah. I don't know. Part of me was also a little bit angry because if their initial reaction was that I couldn't tell our relatives or their friends, then what they're thinking about is their face. You know, I was wondering, why are you placing more importance on how other people look at us than, how you should be there to love your daughter unconditionally, right? So it was a big mix of feelings, I think. Yeah. I think if you know that your friends or family have really conflicting views, I've always believed in not, I guess, being very confrontational or aggressive about it. I think what we can do is do our best to be the best example of ourselves and live our lives, honestly, and hopefully they'll be able to see that you're still the same person, you're still a good person. Being in the LGBTQ community doesn't change you. Yeah, just live your true self and give it time. Favorite part of being me? Well, I'm generally a pretty bubbly, happy, carefree person, and I don't often feel anger or sadness. I guess it's, yeah. I don't know. It's easy for me to be happy with life and love where we are, and have gratitude and appreciation for people around us. Given the new leadership that's taking over in this country, we're still unsure about the consequences, whether any policy change can be overturned. But at the same time, we have to look beyond the geographical borders of the U.S. and also be aware that people all around the world are facing this challenge. The U.S. has progressed really far. We have marriage equality, but in a lot of places, people are still being targeted for their lives, or where it's illegal, it's a crime to be who you are. So I think if we stick together and if we just be honest and share our stories and keep fighting the good fight, I have no doubt that years down the road, and when we look back, this will all be really silly, right? That this was even an issue in the first place. So I think it's great. To have a place to go to where there's so many people sharing their own personal stories. It's a given. You're not going to connect with 100% of the people on there, but if you even find one story that really speaks out to you, I think it can make a world of difference. So having the largest library of stories is great. I just hope it keeps expanding, beyond New York, beyond U.S., all around the world. I think that would be terrific.